Welcome to another VMblog interview series. Today we're excited to have with us Craig Nunes, VP of Marketing from Datrium. Welcome, Craig.
Welcome.
Thanks, guys. Awesome to be here.
We're glad to have you.
Can you start by giving us a little bit of a background about Datrium, maybe?
Sure. Yeah, so, for those of you watching who don't know much about us, Datrium was a company that actually came together back in late 2012. It was founded by, if you remember, the old Data Domain crew. So the founders and CTOs of Data Domain were just leaving EMC. And at the same time, a couple of Diane Green's principal engineers from the early days over at VMware were also looking to kind of do something, sort of virtualization, cloud intersection with, storage and infrastructure. And so Diane actually kind of brokered this super smart group of folks. And their kind of whole mission getting together was how can we, just take the work, the tedious work out of infrastructure, and the idea was to bring together this converged system that brings together primary and secondary workloads, bring together sort of on-prem and cloud capabilities into a single system that's super easy. And so everything that you guys now will talk about, at the end of the day, we're trying to bring it back to make it simple, because infrastructure shouldn't be as hard as it is today.
It's a good update for us, and it's good to hear about Diane Green. I still remember the early days of VMware, interacting with her, and it seems like it's been a long time now.
Yeah, she's got a lot on with her current job. So
yeah,
we're all pulling for her.
Can you go into maybe some more details about the product itself, and I guess even more specifically, can you explain how you're different from an array?
Sure. Yeah. So that's a good place to start. I think if you look back at sort of where arrays were versus today, the advent of solid state totally transformed, kind of how arrays operate and serve data. And what happened with the debut of Flash, now NVMe, is there's so much horsepower behind controllers. The controllers have become the choke point. That didn't used to be the case with disk drives. So now that solid state is everywhere, Flash is everywhere, suddenly controllers are the big problem. And so we talk to a lot of array folks who, they are tired of the controller upgrades, the constant refresh to kind of stay on top of performance. And we for one believe that, move Flash to where it's needed, move it to where the workload lives, to the VM. So therefore get it on the host and take advantage of it that way, and then you can eliminate the hassle of the SAN. You eliminate the queue depth issues with your most powerful servers out there, and you're going to get the real benefit from Flash. And by the way, if you compare Flash on a Dell or HP server versus Flash on a all Flash array, there's a pretty good difference in pricing there. It's going to be a lot more economical, so you're going to get a cheaper solution that goes faster. It's we believe that's absolutely the way the world is going, and so that is our approach. We kind of focus on the fact that Flash is on the host. Our software lives on the host. We virtualize what used to be the array controller into software that lives on each and every server. So as you add a server, you get more I/O performance, more Flash, and so we've got that kind of scale out approach vis-a-vis the array. So we kind of break through that controller bottleneck, scale out, and by the way, we leave kind of the tedious management of LUNs in the rearview mirror, because we're, entirely VM centric. You will never manage another storage artifact as long as you own a Datrium system.
So it kind of sounds like you're a hyperconverged product. Is that right?
So therein lies the interesting thing with Datrium, because we do not fit in the array bucket for sure. We don't quite fit into the HCI category either, but we're certainly much closer to hyperconverged than an array. The reason I say we're not entirely hyperconverged is, if you think about what hyperconverged is, first of all, hyperconverged is an awesome concept, right? It's, get all of your infrastructure in one box, scale it out as you need, build out your infrastructure. There's a couple of challenges there. First of all, few applications scale cost effectively that way, so it can get expensive depending what you're doing. The fact that storage lives in every one of those nodes, those hyperconverged nodes, turns your server world into stateful storage nodes, and so suddenly all your servers become, critical points of data loss if you don't take good care of them. And that's a very different construct from, folks who are running arrays where servers are stateless. You can lose a server, your data is still good. In the hyperconverged world, you lose a couple of drives, your cluster, goes away, and you might even have problems with data loss. So what we've kind of taken the best of what hyperconverged brought, which is scale out, get flash close to the workloads. It's good. Get away from LUNs, VM-centric management, but by taking the durable capacity out of the storage, the HCI node, and sharing it out on the network, think kind of sort of an EC2, S3 kind of model. By doing that, suddenly my host infrastructure is back to being stateless. It's not going to affect data. If I have problems out there, in fact, you can lose virtually all hosts but one and still, have data availability. You can have a cluster now that scales much more significantly, can mix workloads like you might expect to be able to do in the heart of the data center. So you've got, you've kind of taken a hyperconverged model. We've shifted the architecture a bit to take those capabilities into sort of the tier one, low latency data center. At the same time, I mentioned at the top of the call, we've converged secondary storage. That durable capacity on the network, guess what? It's a bunch of low-cost 7K drives. I can store backups there more cost-effectively than you can do on a data domain device. And so suddenly I've got this wonderful flash performance, this super cost-effective secondary storage, all in one, super easy-to-use system. So it is a bit different from hyperconverged for people who are trying to figure it out. I say, look, just kind of think Nutanix, meets Rubrik. We're sort of that love child. Okay. And so it's maybe an easy way to cut all the conversation down to a soundbite.
Yeah, well, thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, I think that's important because I sort of, as I look at Datrium, I'm trying to figure out how it fits into that sort of ecosystem. And like Brian, I'm thinking, is it hyperconverged in some form or fashion? How is it an array? Yeah. But I think it sounds like you did a pretty good job of kind of clarifying and explaining. You're not exactly an array, hyperconverged. That Datrium is sort of a bit different. It sounds like you went into some specifics and really explained it in a good way.
Yeah, I think for us, look, for people kind of looking to get off of arrays, look at hyperconverged. I mean, check it out, because hyperconverged, if you've got some small stuff on the edge, single workloads, it's pretty interesting technology. I think people will find quickly, for enterprises who've got, 1,000 servers out there, they're going to want something that scales a bit more, so kind of think of us as that HCI remedy that really scales. The one thing a lot of folks don't really realize is hyperconverged products generally, are only scaling to 6, 8 nodes, maybe 10. Why? Well, there's a failure model there. If you lose a couple of drives, typically they're deployed in a single failure tolerant mode, and that's done mostly for cost. So single failure tolerance means lose a couple of drives in your cluster and it goes away. So to keep the odds, with the user, small clusters are better, less risky. The problem is if you've got 1,000 servers, you've got 100 clusters, and I think talking to my pals over at like Nutanix, they would say it's not really a problem because we've got Prism, and it's a great way to manage multiple clusters, and they've done a lot of good work there. But the challenge for the customer isn't the management UI. The challenge for the customer is each cluster you have to decide, what are my hot-cold tier ratios? What can I turn on deduplication and still get the performance I need, or encryption or compression? What kind of data protection can I deploy? Does it need to be single failure tolerant or double failure tolerant? Can I use erasure coding? For every single cluster, you've got to figure that out. The last thing you do is put it in the UI. Fine, but all that pain of configuration upfront, managing it over time is hard, and people rarely want to do it a couple of times, much less 100 times, and that's what you're looking at when you go into a real enterprise rollout.
And I guess if you don't think about that at the beginning of the process, it gets harder down the line, and it makes it more difficult to change it later, right?
Yeah. I mean, another successful company in our industry in the old days was NetApp, and we used to hear, everybody loved their first filer, but kind of hated their 20th. I think we've got the same thing going on with hyperconverged. This cluster sprawl is going on for folks who've, kind of pivoted with their HCI deployment and trying to force it into these more scalable deployments and finding out, dang, what did I get myself into? Mm-hmm. And so that's, we're trying to give folks some options there that they otherwise wouldn't have.
So besides this, what else is new at Datrium?
Well, if for those who are kind of new to what we've been up to here, 2017 has been absolutely, raging from a product release perspective. We had intended to get this kind of wonderful primary, secondary, convergence thing going with version 1, in fact. So we built into the product, some of the enablement, but really that came, kind of visible to customers just in April, where we introduced full-on cloud data management capabilities as part of the Datrium DVX. So you can consolidate and accelerate your VMs, but also protect them, as I was mentioning. And so each DVX comes with this, it's a backup class catalog in every single system. So it is a very scalable repository for all of your backups. We can store about 1.2 million snapshot backups, 2,000 per VM, and that was driven by a customer who, needed to do daily backups every day and keep them around for 4 years. So we needed to give, somebody like that plenty of headroom within their system. So the system has, this wonderful searchable catalog, snapshots, replication, and it's, very much a policy-driven utility. We learned something with that cloud data management launch, though, something that I should have understood. But I don't know. We all get smarter when we talk to our customers. Right. We would talk to them about, hey, check out our cloud data management, snaps, replication, wherever you want, super easy. Don't you love it? And the thing that they loved was, I mean, the capabilities were good, but their point was, look, when I deploy, and I've got my virtualization engineer, kind of running my infrastructure, typically for data protection, there's a whole different workflow that goes on. They bring in the backup team. The backup team doesn't quite know, the relevance of one workload from another, and they, kind of give it their best shot, but there's often a lot of rework. And when you explain to the virtualization admin, actually here, when you set up your VM, put your policy in, it's just sort of done. You're kind of handling that end to end. Suddenly they're like, oh my gosh, I don't have to worry about that workflow. I don't have, kind of to depend on a team that might be busy with other stuff at one time. And the learning for us is, look, the technology is great, right? But whatever you can do to, totally take work out of the system for customers, they're going to get emotionally attached. And so that the conversation we mostly have is more about the time saving with those workflows. I'll say, well, are you saving a little bit on software licenses? You don't have to buy backup software. Like, oh yeah, sure. But their thing is, you've just made my life like so much more livable. It's, I'm not going to have to spend nights and weekends now trying to, make sure my protection policies are, being run correctly. And so that is something we've, kind of taken on for sure. People just need less, I'll say silos, just less individual, buckets of things to manage, get it all in one. By the way, for folks who need, specialized stuff from, backup players out there, we absolutely partner with those guys too. But I tell you, our customers often try to find a way to take advantage of just what's built into the platform for protection. The other big thing that we did last year, or this past couple of quarters over the summer, was the Datrium system scaled out to 32 servers, we call them compute nodes, to a single data node. And a data node is good for about 100 terabytes of effective capacity. So you can kind of think of that as the system, up to 30 plus VM and IO processing nodes on this 100 terabyte data node. A lot of customers we talk to have way more than 100 terabytes of stuff they need to deal with, and we knew that. So what we introduced over the summer was scale out of that data node to 10 of them in a single system. So now you've got kind of petabyte scale from a durable capacity perspective, totally cost optimized. Everything that lands on a data node is globally deduplicated, compressed, erasure encoded on 7K drives. It's a wonderful repository, not only for your authoritative copy of your data today, but all of your backups. And on the front end, we increased scale out of that to well over 100 servers, 128 to be precise. So the servers are driving awesome performance. All of your VM data runs in local server flash. So every read never leaves the host. It's super fast, 4 or 5 times faster than an all-flash array. All of your data, first copy and every copy thereafter, lives in this cost-optimized data node on your 10 or 25 gig network, depending what you've got out there. And we to kind of prove the claim that this thing is as scalable as it sounds, we ran a big IO Mark benchmark about a month ago, and we partnered with our pals over at Dell. They were moving from Broadwell to Skylake based servers, and so they had a bunch of Broadwells lying around. So we used kind of last-gen servers, last-gen SSDs. We grabbed 50 of them and 10 of our data nodes and ran a I/O mark that was about 10 times larger than the best hyperconverged benchmark, so an order of magnitude more performance.
Wow.
It was 8,000 I/O mark VMs, and about 5 times larger than the best all-flash array benchmark. So we've done delivered on the promise of primary plus secondary, delivered on this promise of scale in the heart of the data center, and for a lot of folks who blinked, they missed it. And so the point is, wow, if you knew a bit about Datrium first half of the year, check it out now, because man, it's a whole different ballgame.
So Craig, that's a good thing, a good jumping point from. I hope you don't mind me putting you in this position, but after talking about all that, the impressive numbers. We're nearing the end of the year now, and a lot of people are pulling out their crystal balls, trying to prognosticate and figure out what's next. What can you tell us now? What we can expect from Datrium by, say, this same time next year?
Yeah, great question. We are all very aware of the fact that a lot of our customers are trying to work out how their strategic IT investments balance between their on-prem or private cloud data centers and public cloud data centers. And our focus, our differentiator, if you will, is being able to very simply move data, system to system, site to site, cloud to cloud. That is kind of where we are going as a company. And so the demonstrating to our customers just how simple and cost effective we can make that intersection of public cloud and on-prem data center is a big focus of the roadmap, and I'll even give you a little hint as to what we're doing in a second. But to kind of kick that off, what we introduced just a couple of weeks ago, and we even talked to you guys a little bit about it, was this thing called Cloud DVX. And you can imagine, everything that we talked about this system. Look, it's just software. It runs on pretty standard gear that people have in all of their data centers today. We took that software and we ported it to a cloud-native instance in AWS. And the first service that we offer on that cloud-based DVX is a backup and recovery service from on-prem DVXs. And so it basically ties your, if you've got an off-site backup requirement, or, instead of maybe disk to tape, you're thinking more disk to cloud, a little more flexible. We have an offering for that. But the trick with that, and what we learned with our early customers, is whenever you consider taking anything to the public cloud, what is the public cloud? It's infrastructure, right? Mm-hmm. Most of our customers are not developers. They're what I call consumers. They're operations guys just trying to solve a problem to run their business. And so they don't want to have to kind of dig in and relearn a whole different infrastructure, right? One infrastructure is enough. What they want is to instead leverage what the public cloud offers without having to dig in there. They want to do it cost effectively. They're very concerned that every time they fidget with their public cloud based data that they're going to get a big bill for that. And so between hiding the complexity of public cloud infrastructure, which we do because we deliver this recovery as a service capability. It just looks like a DVX. The big driver is deduplication. A small footprint. Whatever you can do to get your footprint down in public cloud is magic, because that is going to drive your capacity charges. Every time you touch your data, your puts and gets on that data, it's going to ring up a charge. Your ingress, your VPN is going to charge you by the hour, by the gigabyte. And when you want data back, your egress charges, it's going to cost you. And so if you can deliver a solution, whether it's us or anything that folks watching this might look at, focus on the footprint reduction, right? People typically don't store video, even though it's very cold, in the cloud, because it doesn't dedupe and compress well, and you're going to pay a fortune. They figure out a way to do it on-prem. We have a wonderful dedupe and compression technology. Our guys basically invented dedupe back at Data Domain, right? So we will take what's typically a 3-to-1 global data reduction within a system, and when we replicate that to a public cloud, we will globally dedupe in the cloud and get another kind of 1.5 to 1 data reduction rate for about, think between 4 and 5 to 1 data reduction. So you're going to pay for maybe just 20% of the footprint of your actual data. That is money. And when you compare that to other alternatives, that's a big opportunity. Folks have not used cloud, broadly speaking, for a lot of backup-related capabilities because of the cost. Sure, a lot of dev goes on there, but backup, it can drive a big footprint, and it's proven too expensive. Our approach is probably maybe a third the cost of maybe a typical hyperconverged solution replicating to the cloud for backup, and for any backup or gateway solution that is storing a backup in S3, it's probably a tenth the cost or less, because there's full backups are going to be a frequent thing in a lot of those approaches. So we think we've got that part right, and so get the conversation going with customers about that and where they're going with the cloud. For us in 2018. We have, a big focus on, cloud managed, AI enabled correlation orchestration for our customers. Super important that I think folks are going to get a glimpse at in that first half of the year. But beyond that, Cloud DVX, we're going to offer other services on that, like DR as a service. We'll stand up full instances, fail them over to the cloud, use it for your test dev instances, for analytics in the cloud, for workloads that a customer determines are more cost effective in that infrastructure. So we've got a lot on for Cloud DVX and for the correlation and orchestration next year. It's going to be good. And part of what we're finding is there's no, when we're talking to customers, we're not really talking about our product at all, actually. We're mostly talking about what they're up to, helping them understand the ins and outs, the pricing models, how to find ways to quickly figure out what belongs there versus here. And so it actually is a wonderful and more strategic conversation than talking about your favorite feature on your favorite product.
So where can our viewers go if they want to find out more information about Datrium and some of the stuff we've talked about today?
Absolutely. So I'd point them to www.datrium.com for sure. We have one of our leaders here at the company, a guy named Andre Libovici, has got a wonderful website, and from time to time he'll catch things that we're up to as well. And his site is much more industry in focus. So it's a great site just to kind of hop on in general to see what's going on out there, and there'll be from time to time things going on about Datrium there. Both of those are awesome places to go, figure out what we're up to.
Awesome.
myvirtualcloud.net.
Well, thanks for taking the time to speak with VMblog today.
Yeah, my pleasure, you guys. Let's do it again.
Definitely. Thanks for your time, Craig.
You bet. See you later.
All right. Bye-bye.